Hey everyone, it's Charlie here from Daily Motor, and today we've got the 2020 Hyundai Accent. This is the limited model, so it's top trim. It's going to give you everything that you can get on an Accent. And this being Hyundai's smallest and least expensive vehicle offering, it is pretty simple, even in top trim limited form. But you're getting the nicer wheels. They're not little steelies with hubcaps like some of the cheaper cars. We've got some of these chrome accents on the door handles and along the window trim. But overall, it's just a small subcompact sedan. Trunk, very simple, decently sized, but pretty average. No special little storage pockets or nets or anything like that. You do get a compact spare with the jack and tools right up on top, so that's good. But this is just like a very cheap kind of thing that flops down on here, but you know, it works. Now, this is a minor annoyance of me for any car, is if there's no place to pull down the trunk here. And what I mean is, right now you can see I was able to clean it up a good amount, but I got this car pretty dirty earlier this week. And when it was dirty all around here, you have to reach up and touch that and get your hands dirty just to close the trunk. I'd much rather have some sort of handle right here that you can pull it closed. Sometimes I find myself grabbing these little rubber knobs and pulling it closed. Now, being a subcompact sedan is a little tight inside, especially in the back. So we get back here. Driver's seat is set for a 5'10" person. That's me. And it's tight back here. My head is hitting the roof and my knees are hitting the seat in front of me. My back's pretty reclined, or pretty upright, I should say. But I could be back here for maybe half an hour to an hour's time. If I were riding back for a while, I'd probably maybe even turn sideways, put my knees back a little bit, ask the driver to scoot up a little. And there is no center armrest, so the back seat's definitely not the place to be in the Accent. There is at least a USB port back here though, so if you do have kids needing to charge up their devices or you just need to run an extra cable, you do have that. Materials honestly feel fine for this class. You can get some really cheap stuff in subcompact cars, and yes, there are a lot of cheap plastics around the Accent, but they kind of work. They're kind of like not the cheapest of cheap plastics. It doesn't really feel out of place for a $20,000 car. And the things that you touch regularly are pretty nice. The steering wheel, it's got a nice feel to it. The center armrest has some squish for your elbow, and it does move back and forth, so you can extend it or retract it. The shift knob feels nice. There's some leather around there. The only thing that you touch regularly that doesn't feel great is this armrest. But I haven't found my elbows getting sore yet, but I've also had long sleeves on, so that kind of helps mitigate. But the door handles feel fine for this class, all the controls, buttons, everything feels, honestly, the volume knob is surprisingly quality feeling, as well as the HVAC controls. You do have heated seats in the limited model, 3-stage, and they work really well. They get really hot quite quickly. We've got a USB port and two standard 12-volt cigarette outlets there. Now, if you want to know more about the sound system, it's just a basic 6-speaker sound system, but we are doing a sound system review. Check the link out in the description for that. All right, let's start this up, get it out on the road. Now, little cars often have an advantage in that, just based on their small size and low weight, they tend to be a little bit more fun to drive. The Accent kind of falls in the middle of that category. It's not exactly inspiring, but it's also not numb. It's been a while since I've been in a subcompact vehicle, at least a subcompact car rather than SUVs. Everyone's pumping out the subcompact SUVs these days, and those are even worse in terms of physics because you've got a higher center of gravity, and they tend to be a little heavier as well. But some manufacturers, like Mazda with their Mazda 2, or what is now sold as the Toyota Yaris sedan, I want to say? Yeah, Yaris sedan. And I think maybe the Yaris hatchback for 2020 as well. That car, the steering is direct, it's very light, it's playful, it's nimble. It's a good small car. Other cars, like the previous actual Toyota Yaris, but not the one made by Mazda, that was a little bit more numb. The steering isn't quite as direct, and it doesn't feel as light and playful. And it also depends on the throttle mapping and the engine, the transmission. There's a lot that goes into it. So it's not like you can just simply have a small car and have it by default be fun. But what I mean is that the odds are more in its favor. Now this car has a 120 horsepower, 1.6 liter inline 4, naturally aspirated, and it has what Hyundai calls an intelligent variable transmission. What that means is it's like a standard continuously variable transmission, but rather than using a belt, it uses a chain. And that allows it to be a little bit more responsive and not have quite the springy effect as many continuously variable transmissions. And in all the different applications that I've driven Hyundai's IVT, if you want to call it, it's just a CVT, but it's branding, it's been pretty good. And the same kind of applies for the Hyundai as well, or as for the Accent as well. I don't mind CVTs in their right application, and this one behaves pretty nicely. It allows you to simulate some shifts, but it also just takes advantage of the power where it's needed. I mean, this is not a very powerful, strong engine. It's only making 113 pound-feet of torque and 120 horsepower. But with the right transmission calibration, it can make day-to-day driving not feel so like you're underpowered. But even though I'm able to throw this car around, get the tires to squeal, I'm full throttle a lot of the time, I'm not particularly enjoying it the way I would in a Ford Fiesta or a Toyota Yaris, the Mazda version. Or what are some other good small cars? The Honda Fit is pretty good, pretty nimble. I will say it's remarkably balanced. When I throw it into a corner, I'm not getting a ton of understeer. It is kind of just making its way through. Let's do a little 60 to 0 test here. Oh, actually going a decent bit faster than I expected. Very uneventful. Seems like a decent stopping distance. So can't actually light up the tires on this one, but just in case, we've got traction stability control off. We're going to go into its one drive mode of sport, or I should say second drive mode, and lean into it. So I don't know why it has to simulate shifts there. Really, it should just, if it's a CVT, it should just be getting to a set RPM and then staying that way. But they're trying to make it seem like a little bit more of a standard transmission. It's fine. It's not going to be a speed demon either way. So at the end of the day, most people are not going to be driving these cars like I am right now. They're going to be driving them normal, just day to day, getting up to speed, getting decent fuel economy, following the speed limits, all that standard stuff. And for that, the Accent actually does pretty well. This engine doesn't mind revving out to make the power that you need, and the transmission, like I was saying earlier, takes advantage of the power pretty well. Let's get up to highway speed here. Set the cruise for 70 miles per hour. And story is as to be expected at 70 here in the Accent. You hear a decent amount of road noise. Wind noise actually isn't too bad. And you hear the engine a little bit as well. It's got a rev We're at 70 miles per hour and it's doing about 2,400 RPM. The main story is the tire noise. There's just not a lot of isolation from that. The ride is average. No big surprises. The most difficult vehicles to review are those that are actually fairly decent. They're not bad enough to go on rants and rambles and tear it apart, but they're also not great enough to rave and talk about all the great things about it. So a car like this, it just is. It does a good job at what most people need it to do in this price range, and that's that. In terms of comfort, the seats are fine. They're a little bit short. They don't support the thighs super well, but overall, I've spent a few hours driving it around, different situations, highway, city, dirt roads, and it's done everything pretty well. But you're just not going to get that sort of exciting small car feel like you might get in some competitors. So if you're somebody who really cares about maybe every now and then taking this car out on some country roads, having some fun with it, tossing it around, you might want to look at some other options. But if you just need a car that is very reliable, simple, cheap to own, run, fix, get serviced, buy, has a long warranty, you got the 10-year, 100,000 mile powertrain warranty, 5-year bumper to bumper. Everything's really straightforward. You've got Apple CarPlay, Android Auto support for the infotainment there. Got a very simple, easy to use gauge cluster with digital speed readout. There's actually very little to complain about with the Accent. There's just also not a lot to get excited about. And for some people in the subcompact class, that's enough for them. So here's me just easing off the line how I would take off if I were just driving this car. And in this kind of driving, the power actually feels really good. Hyundai's been doing a really good job with their steering lately as well. It's nicely weighted. Even in these simple cars, it's pretty good. Let's hit the speed bump at 20 miles per hour. The suspension does do a pretty good job at not being too clunky or too jarring. You see on that bump? It's just not going to absorb the little tiny bumps any better or worse than its competition. Oh, you do have a sunroof in the Limited as well, so that's nice. Backup camera. Does its job. The lines turn when you move the steering wheel, so that's nice. So that's a little test drive of the Hyundai Accent. Let's head back to the office and talk a little bit about its competition and my final thoughts. Alright, so now that we got a chance to get behind the wheel of the Accent, check it out on the road, let's take a look at the build configurator, talk about the specs a little bit, talk about some of its competitors. So looking here at Hyundai's website, very straightforward, easy to use. Go up to vehicles, down to the sedans, choose our Accent. You've got 3 different trims you're looking at, SE, SEL, and Limited. Now there are no options for any of these vehicles. It's just, you get what's in the SE, you get what's in the SEL, or you get what's in the Limited. Now the only car that offers a manual transmission option is the SE. So if you're building the base boy, then you're looking at all the color options, red, blue, or various grayscales. Let's go with a black here. You've got black or beige and black interior. Sticking with black as well. And rather than spend $1,100 for that pretty decent variable transmission, I'm going to stick with the manual. And then like I said, no options here other than some accessories, including carpeted floor mats, which I wish Hyundai would just start offering standard. It's silly that they still charge extra for those. But all said and done, you're looking at $16,270 for a base Accent that you get to drive yourself. So that manual transmission is going to add a little bit of driving enjoyment to the Accent, but it's still not going to be as fun as some of its competitors. So if you start up with the SEL, what are you getting different? Well, they're throwing in a 7-inch touchscreen display with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay support, some USB ports, and they're actually giving you alloy wheels rather than steelies covered in hubcaps. Still get all your same color options, but you don't get to choose a manual transmission anymore. And if you go all the way up to limited, you're looking at about a $20,000 car, but you're getting a key that you can just come up, touch the door handle, you can leave it in your pocket, proximity key it's called. 17-inch wheels, better headlights, they look a little more aggressive as well, and just some additional safety features and heated seats. And that's what our test model had here as well. It was a limited, so you're looking at $20,365 out the door with those carpeted floor mats. Overall, pretty standard for this class, but you are getting that 10-year powertrain warranty, 5-year bumper-to-bumper warranty. Other than that, standard engine across the board, pretty straightforward. So in dealing with competitors for the Accent, we're going to look at US News and Report's list here, not because I necessarily agree with the list, but because it's very easy, straightforward to look at, talk about some of the vehicles here. So they've got the Cooper, Clubman, and the Chevy Spark on here. We're going to totally ignore those. The Spark's a much smaller vehicle. It's considered a city car like your Fiat 500 and Smart Car. And the Cooper Clubman, I mean, it starts at $31,000. That's not even in the same ballpark as the Accent. The Mitsubishi Mirage, I agree with their score here. I agree with their rating. Mirage really offers nothing in this class other than a decent warranty, same as the Accent and its sister, the Kia Rio. Just skip the Mirage. Now next, I don't think the Versa deserves to be quite this far down, but they did give it a very similar score to some of these vehicles. I think that's fair. I would actually take this Chevy Sonic, drop it down below the Versa. So I'd be looking Chevy Sonic, Nissan Versa, Hyundai Accent, then the Kia Rio. They're pretty similar. The Kia just has a slightly better feel to it, and I think looks just a little bit better as well. Then this Toyota Yaris, which is actually a Mazda 2 in disguise, I'm going to move that all the way up to 2. It drives really well, and the interior materials are really good. You are going to pay a tad bit more money depending on your trim, and you're not getting quite as good of a warranty as you are with the Kia and the Hyundai, but I think its driving dynamics and its interior materials really make up for that difference. Get rid of this Mini Cooper. It's just more expensive, more luxurious feeling inside. Totally different car to drive. And then right up here, the Honda Fit. I do think it deserves to be at the top in subcompact class. You're getting a hatchback, you're getting a really well packaged interior, good materials, a safe car, reliable car. It's pretty fun to drive. So I think if you're looking in the subcompact class, go out, drive yourself a Honda Fit, drive the Toyota Yaris, and check out at least the Kia Rio or Hyundai Accent and see if you can't get a much better deal on one of those cars. Maybe it's a better choice for you. The Accent might not be quite as fun to drive as the Yaris or the Fit, and it might be a little bit more bland, but at the end of the day, you're getting a very reliable vehicle, something you can own for a long time. It's going to offer no surprises, get good fuel economy, even when you're driving on it hard or easy. You got that super long warranty, like I said, and if you think it's the car for you, it's definitely a safe choice. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you were able to get a good idea of what Hyundai offers with their subcompact Accent. If you liked the video, please hit that subscribe button. Check out some of our other videos. Check out the sound system tests on the Accent if that's something that interests you. I'm Charlie from Daily Motor, and as always, drive on.